You've heard the saying, I subscribe to it wholeheartedly. It takes a village. And we are really working together as a team on this particular thing. And to lead us off on this journey together, it is my pleasure to introduce Mr. David Turk, the Deputy Secretary for the U.S. Department of Energy. Just a little background on Mr. Turk. Before he was in this role at the department, he was Deputy Executive Director of the International Energy Agency, and he focused there on helping countries around the world tackle their clean energy transitions. His work included important reports on digitalization of energy systems, possible futures for clean hydrogen, even a project that tracks progress on a whole wide range of clean energy technologies. Would you please take us away, Deputy Secretary Turk?
Well, thank you very much, George, for the introduction and all that you do and other colleagues in the Arctic Energy Office. It's just a pleasure to be with you all and absolutely share the excitement George has just expressed, and I know our other folks talking today will as well. And we're really here because of the both the critical challenges, but I think we also need to focus on the immense opportunities for clean energy in the Arctic region. Of course, there are challenges, and we should be upfront with those. Alaska is certainly on the front lines of the climate crisis, warming faster than any other U.S. state. And that has implications: permafrost thaw, fisheries impacts, changes to forest and weather patterns, and wildfires as well. At the same time, there are real opportunities. The Arctic has always been a living laboratory for sustainable energy by necessity. Resources are scarce. We have to find ways to provide affordable, reliable, resilient energy in a harsh climate and in extremely remote communities. And I should say affordability and access are especially critical. Energy costs 4 times as much in Alaska as it does nationwide here in the US. In rural Alaskan and Arctic communities, it's 8 times the national cost. And this hurts vulnerable populations the most. So certainly at DOE, we are incredibly proud, all of us, to have had a long history of partnership and place-based support in the Arctic. Our focus has always been on learning from local expertise. Too often here in DC, we do more talking than listening, but I think this is a particular area where we need to do more listening, and we've tried to do that from the Department of Energy side of things. And listening to that expertise, including indigenous and traditional knowledge, and supporting what's already going on in the region, exciting efforts that are going on in the region. So we launched our Arctic Energy Office about a year ago to deepen this partnership in the Arctic, and requested an increase in funding for the office for this fiscal year to make sure we've got the resources appropriate with the challenges and opportunities. We invest tens of millions of dollars in climate research in Alaska every year. Just to give a few examples, our Cold Climate Housing Research Center in Fairbanks joined NREL last year to develop new solutions for healthy, sustainable housing made for the North. Collaborating with the University of Alaska Fairbanks to scale the production of kelp for food, for fuel, and beyond as well. Just this April, we announced that DOE experts will help 5 Alaskan communities from Sitka to Wainwright to reduce their dependence on fossil fuels and move to cleaner, cheaper, more reliable energy sources. In June, we gave $1 million to launch Alaska through our Office of Technology Transitions, and you'll hear from my colleague Christina here shortly, the EPIC Prize to support local electric transportation entrepreneurs. In July, we awarded over $5 million to 6 Alaska Native communities for clean energy projects to save money and increase reliability. So we're incredibly proud of DOE's existing footprint in the Arctic. But to really secure the region's clean energy future, we need a huge focus on commercialization of unique, innovative technologies that are made for the far north. There's much more that we can be doing to be a helpful partner. And that's exactly what Arctic X is all about: investing in local expertise, leveraging the full weight of our national laboratories, and moving new technologies into the field and to market for Arctic communities to benefit from. And we've got to collaborate. This is about partnerships. If we're going to be successful here, we need to collaborate with the private sector to fully catalyze this shift towards clean, resilient Arctic energy. It's what we're aiming to do across the entire country and around the world for that matter, making sure solutions go from our labs to communities at scale, and that local experts benefit and have a back and forth and good, healthy exchange with our national lab and DOE network so that we can grow solutions from the ground up. So DOE is committed to doing our part, to doing as much as we possibly can in partnership to invest in Arctic energy innovation. And today's program will certainly show that the entire Biden administration is ready to do the same through a whole of government approach. So thanks for joining us today. Thanks for all the partnership, and looking forward to really getting on to the discussion here. So back to you, George. Oh, I think you're still on mute, George.
That would be correct. Thank you.
We've all been there, George. We've all been there.
I know. They're great. I have a couple of quick questions for you initially. So let's start with this. You've enumerated some of the challenges, the opportunities that you've seen in the Arctic region, and some of the ways the Department of Energy is addressing those gaps. Are there any particular ones that would really stand out to you as like, these are things that we could do more of, or that we could replicate more broadly outside the Arctic?
Well, I think the thing we have to focus on, and again, be honest and have candid discussions among ourselves, there are some real unique challenges to commercializing technologies in the Arctic region. And we need to have an honest, candid discussion of those and figure out how do we address those gaps. And I mentioned some of the programs that we're doing on that, but maybe three challenges in particular to focus on. One is the seasonal variability for clean energy resources. Whether you're talking about the low light in the winter, making year-round solar challenging, the variable wind conditions, hydro resources freezing in the winter, which doesn't happen in some of the states in the South, of course. And the winter load is when energy loads are highest and when the heating needs are really there. So there's a mismatch of supply and demand. Now that's a challenge, but there's opportunities there. There's ways to leverage technologies, just as we're trying to do through the Arctic Energy Office in ways that benefit local communities. Another big challenge, a second big challenge, is changing conditions. 70% of existing infrastructure in the Arctic is sitting on thawing permafrost. That is a big challenge. And new technologies have to be adapted to climate change. We're having to do that across all 50 states in the US, but I think especially so in the Arctic context, in the context in Alaska. And Arctic supply chains are also vulnerable to disruptions, whether it's extreme weather events, geopolitics, other kinds of issues like that. And I think the part that I'm most excited about, and this is a real opportunity space, is there's a huge opportunity here for unique localized solutions. One size does not fit all anywhere, frankly, in the US, but one size does not fit all, particularly in the Arctic context. Every community has different needs. Getting a new technology to scale in a community in Alaska has a whole different connotation and set of challenges than in the lower 48. Many Arctic communities are not connected to centralized infrastructure like they are in many parts of the lower 48. So technologies need to be able to run independently, such as a microgrid, standalone energy systems, whether from dozens of kilowatts to several megawatts on that. So it's unique challenges in some ways, different challenges, but also the opportunity space. And it is an opportunity for us, certainly from the Department of Energy, to learn. And I think there's a lot of lessons learned of what we're doing in Alaska and in the Arctic that can be useful elsewhere as well. So we have to think of this as a two-way street.
I really like that idea of a back and forth, learning from one another across the latitudes, not just around the longitudes, if we will. So let's take a little deeper into one particular aspect of that collaboration opportunity space and focus in on technology transfer. commercialization of technology, perhaps developed by the Department of Energy, perhaps elsewhere? How can the Arctic participate in that? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I know Vanessa is going to be speaking here shortly, and she's been doing some terrific work more broadly throughout our DOE enterprise as the head of our Office of Technology Transitions, and really focusing on commercialization opportunities. And that is really a fundamental challenge, and sort of the key challenge, certainly a key challenge facing us today. So again, in the Arctic context, maybe a couple specific examples in areas that there's some real opportunity that we should be certainly focused in being a good partner from the Department of Energy side of things. One is we should learn from and teach each other cold climate and rural communities solutions. So what works in an Alaska climate can work in Minnesota or Maine, for example, and vice versa in ways that we should take full advantage of. An example there in particular is cold climate heat pumps. And earlier just this month, we announced new industry partnerships to increase the efficiency of these cold climate heat pumps in interesting ways that have benefits for, again, real people and real communities in Alaska, but also in other parts of our country as well. Energy efficiency, the first fuel as it's called, is incredibly important throughout not only the US, but throughout the world. And I think particularly appropriate in the Arctic and in Alaska, right? If we can save as much energy in the first place, it reduces those costs. Everything goes further along those lines. And then maybe one other example is really taking advantage of diverse renewable energy resources. We've got solar, we've got wind. It's both of those technologies are doing great and going like gangbusters where there's significant resource pieces, but there's geothermal, there's tidal, certainly exploiting fully the hydro capabilities in an environmentally sustainable way. And even advanced nuclear. There's some really interesting advanced nuclear opportunities, including and especially for remote communities, if we can get that technology right as well. And we've got to remember, diesel and other heating oils cost a lot, vulnerable to supply disruptions. So there's a huge opportunity for renewables, diverse renewables, to be cheaper, more flexible, more resilient, but we've got to get this right. These are real people, real communities, real lives that are at stake, and we've got to do this in a way that really works in the real world.
Outstanding. So many things to follow up on, but maybe I can just focus in on one other aspect of what's under your purview. Can you help us understand some of the ways that the national laboratories at the Department of Energy are actually helping to create this clean and secure energy future that we long for in the Arctic and beyond?
So George, as you know, and hopefully we'll get a chance to for others to know and work with labs, if you've not had a chance to work with labs, these are crown jewels. These are huge, phenomenal assets, 17 national labs that US taxpayers have invested in for decades, years and years. And what we're trying to do is have an Arctic lab partnership with these labs. So we're convening a group of 11 national labs, 11 of our 17 national labs, to work together to increase the impact of their efforts in the Arctic in particular, and really trying to leverage our national labs even more than what we've been able to do so far. And then maybe one other particular example that I'd highlight, and I was just out there at NREL, and you mentioned NREL as well too, George, looking at what they're working on. It's something called the ARES effort. So this stands for Advanced Research on Integrated Energy Systems. And it's a research platform, a real life research platform that simulates how technologies will work on the grid scale, and again in the real world. So you do your modeling in computers, that has a place, but then you can use ARES out there in the real world and test things before you put it in real communities with real lives at stake. So it helps us model how different clean energy and grid modernization technologies, again in the Arctic context, can make Arctic energy systems more reliable, affordable, and resilient. So that's just one specific example in the NREL context, but there's a lot more that our labs can do to be helpful in this context.
That's outstanding. I'm a real believer in modeling and analysis. So there's so many parametric combinations you can look at to check out resilience, robustness, et cetera. And so are there any particular topics beyond that that you would like to draw our attention to before we turn our attention to Secretary Holland?
I think just the last thing I'd leave you with, George, and I hit this, and I suspect all of our presenters will hit this, is just the importance of partnership. And partnership, not in a kind of, if I can colloquially use the word, a BS kind of paper partnership way, right? Where you sign an MOU and everybody pats each other either physically on the back or now virtually on the back and says, great, we've got an MOU, we've got a partnership, but real partnerships that benefit all of the partners involved, real information exchange, rolling up the sleeves, getting to work. Again, pushing to commercial solutions in the real world. If we've just got partnerships where we talk among ourselves and nothing in the real world is impacted, that's just not good enough. So I know there's a lot of partners on this call and hopefully would be partners as well. And certainly from the Department of Energy side, we look forward to building real partnerships because that's the only way to be successful at scale and pace of what we need to be doing.
Well, I would like to really thank you for your time and just clearly how much you've thought about this application space. There are so many questions in the Q&A actually right now that are scrolling past. It's kind of frustrating that we don't have more time, but we'll follow up on those as we can. And to some of them, maybe things to bring to your attention down the road, we'll work on that.
Thanks, everybody.